My wife was cheating on me with her boss and thought I wouldn't find out. When I gathered evidence of the affair, photos and videos, I plastered them all over the house, then sent them to the boss's wife. I've been processing everything and finally feel ready to share my story. Writing this is part of my therapy, and my counselor thinks it might help others in similar situations. I, 34M, had been married to Sarah, 32F, for 8 years. We met during our senior year of college at a mutual friend's Halloween party. She was dressed as Wonder Woman, and I was a terrible attempt at Tony Stark. We spent the whole night talking about everything from quantum physics to our favorite cereal brands. 3 years later, we had what everyone called a fairy tale wedding at her parents' vineyard in Napa Valley. For 8 years, I thought we had a perfect marriage. No kids yet, we were both focused on our careers but were planning to start trying next year. We even had names picked out, Lucas for a boy, after my grandfather who raised me, and Emma for a girl, after her late sister who passed away from leukemia when they were teens. I worked as a software engineer at a promising startup, and she was a marketing executive at Anderson & Mills, a mid-sized marketing firm that had been growing rapidly over the past few years. The first sign something was wrong started about 7 months ago. We had just returned from celebrating our 8th anniversary in Maui. It was during that trip that we had finally decided to start trying for a baby in the coming year. Sarah seemed excited about it at the time, but looking back, I realized that's when her behavior started to change. It began with small things. She started working late more often, saying her team had landed JP Morgan Chase as a client and needed to put in extra hours. At first, I didn't think anything of it. She'd always been career-driven, and I supported that. I even started making her favorite meals and bringing them to her office when she said she'd be working past 9 p.m. Funny enough, that's how I got my first real clue something was wrong. Twice I showed up with food, and her office was dark and empty. Then came the digital red flags. Being in tech, I'm pretty observant about digital behavior changes. Sarah went from being someone who would absent-mindedly leave her phone anywhere to suddenly having it glued to her hand. She changed all her passwords, we used to share everything, and started using her fingerprint unlock exclusively. When she did set her phone down, it was always face down. She also began taking work calls in our garage or backyard, something she'd never done before. The final straw was when I noticed she had installed a second messaging app with a privacy lock. That's when I knew I had to dig deeper. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I needed to know the truth. I installed a tracking app on her phone while she was sleeping and put a small voice-activated recorder in her car. I also managed to recover her deleted text messages through her cloud backup, which she'd forgotten was linked to our shared family account. What I discovered was worse than my darkest imaginings. She wasn't just having team dinners, she was having intimate dinners with her boss, James, 45M, at high-end restaurants across town. The voice recordings from her car captured their conversations, and what I heard made me physically sick. They weren't just having a physical affair, they were emotionally invested and had been planning a future together. James, I discovered, was married to Monica, 42F, a former elementary school teacher who had given up her career to support his, raising their 3 kids, ages 16, 13, and 8, while he climbed the corporate ladder. Monica had recently started a small Etsy business selling handmade jewelry, something Sarah had actually complimented at a company Christmas party, the same party where, I now know, she and James had snuck away to his office to be alone. The more evidence I gathered, the more disturbed I became. They had a system for their meetups. Sarah would tell me she was working late, while James would tell Monica he had client dinners. They would meet at various hotels, always booking under his corporate account. They had inside jokes about deceiving their spouses. In one particularly painful recording, Sarah laughed about how I was too trusting and wouldn't know if she hit him with a brick. They even mocked Monica's attempts to spice up her marriage with James, calling her pathetically desperate. I spent 2 months gathering evidence. Photos of them entering hotels, recordings of their conversations, screenshots of their text messages, and even security camera footage from the office parking garage showing them leaving together late at night. I documented everything meticulously, creating both digital and physical copies. I even hired a private investigator to follow them for a week, which provided high-quality photos and confirmed their regular meeting spots. During this time, maintaining a normal facade was excruciating. I had to sit across from Sarah at dinner, listening to her lie about her day. I had to attend 2 neighborhood barbecues where James and Monica were present, watching him play the devoted family man while my wife stared at him longingly when she thought no one was looking. The worst was when Sarah's parents visited for a weekend, and she put on such a convincing show of being the perfect wife that her mother commented on how lucky I was. Then came my opportunity. Sarah mentioned she would be at a 3-day marketing conference in Chicago. I knew from my surveillance that she and James had actually booked a luxury suite at the Four Seasons, planning a romantic getaway under the guise of a business trip. While they were gone, I put my plan into action. First, I took Friday off work and spent the entire day preparing. I printed hundreds of photos, their dinner dates, hotel visits, screenshots of their explicit messages. I covered every surface of our house with them. The kitchen cabinets, bathroom mirrors, bedroom walls, even the ceiling above our bed. Each photo was accompanied by timestamp details and locations. I placed their most explicit text conversations on her bedside table, and on James's side, yes, they had designated sides during their hotel meetups, I placed photos of his family. I created a timeline of their affair, starting with their first private dinner 6 months ago, and hung it in chronological order down our main hallway. Next to each date, I placed corresponding evidence, receipts, photos, text messages. I made sure to highlight all the important family events they had missed or lied about to meet each other: his daughter's soccer championship, our nephew's baptism, his son's piano recital. But the most damning evidence went in our home office. I set up a digital photo frame that cycled through security camera footage of them together. Next to it, I placed a USB drive containing all the audio recordings from her car, with a conveniently written index of the most incriminating conversations, including timestamps where they discussed their plans to eventually leave their spouses. I created comprehensive digital folders with all the evidence. One went to Monica, accompanied by a respectful note explaining everything and offering to provide any additional information she might need for legal proceedings. I sent copies to both sets of our parents, focusing on the timeline and photos rather than the more explicit evidence. I also sent a carefully curated version to our closest friends, who had been wondering why we'd become so distant lately. The final touch was in our bedroom. Above our bed, where we had hung our wedding photo, I created a collage. On one side, photos from our wedding day, when everything was genuine and full of hope. On the other side, photos of her and James leaving hotels, with their text messages planning these encounters overlaid on top. In the center, I placed our wedding vows, which we had written ourselves, with all the lines they had broken highlighted in bright yellow. When Sarah returned Sunday evening, I wasn't home. I had packed my essential belongings and moved them to my best friend Mike's guest house. Mike, who had lost his own marriage to infidelity 5 years ago, understood exactly what I was going through and had been my rock throughout the planning process. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter, right next to a particularly damning photo of her and James entering a hotel, with a note that read, "I hope he was worth it." The aftermath was nuclear. Sarah called me 47 times that night. I still have all her voicemails saved. They tell a story of their own, starting with rage, "How dare you invade my privacy," moving to panic, "Please, we can talk about this," then to tears, "I'm so sorry, I never meant to hurt you," and finally to desperate begging, "I'll do anything, please just come home." I didn't respond to any of them. James's wife Monica showed more dignity than I could have imagined. She waited until Monday morning, calmly dropped their kids off at school, then went to her lawyer's office with my evidence. She filed for divorce that same day. When James returned home that evening, he found divorce papers on the kitchen table and the locks changed. The scandal hit their workplace like a tsunami. Anderson and Mills had recently implemented a strict policy about supervisor-subordinate relationships after a similar scandal the previous year. Both Sarah and James were fired within days. The CEO personally called me to apologize, offering to write recommendations for my next job if I wanted to leave the tech industry. Apparently, they were worried about a potential lawsuit. Sarah's parents, who had always treated me like a son, were devastated. Her father, a retired judge who had officiated our wedding, told her she had disgraced their family. He later called me to apologize for raising a daughter who could do this and offered to help with legal expenses. My own parents, while heartbroken, showed incredible support. My mother, a marriage counselor ironically, helped me find an excellent therapist, while my father used his business connections to find me a shark of a divorce lawyer. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly smooth. With the mountain of evidence I had gathered, Sarah knew she had no leverage. Her lawyer advised her to agree to my terms, which were actually quite reasonable. I just wanted a clean break. I got to keep our house, which I later sold, my retirement accounts, and most of our assets. She didn't even fight for custody of our dog, Max, which hurt him visibly. He still sits by the door sometimes, waiting for her to come home. James's divorce was messier. Monica's lawyer was brilliant, using the evidence I provided to show how he had misused company resources to conduct the affair. She got primary custody of their kids, their house, and a substantial settlement. Their oldest daughter, upon learning about the affair, posted a scathing message on Facebook calling him a lying cheater and changed her last name to her mother's maiden name. The professional fallout was severe. Sarah, despite her impressive resume, struggled to find work in our city. Marketing is a small world, and word had spread. She eventually took a junior position at a firm 3 states away. James was forced to sell his BMW and move into a 1-bedroom apartment. He now works as a middle manager at a much smaller company, making less than half his former salary. It's been 6 months now. I've been in therapy, working through my trust issues and learning to process my anger in healthy ways. I sold our house, too many memories, and bought a modern condo downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and no trace of my old life. I've focused on my career, earning a promotion to lead developer, and recently started mentoring young coders at a local coding bootcamp. I've started dating again, very casually. My therapist says I'm handling it in a healthy way, not rushing into anything serious. I met a kind woman named Rachel at a rock climbing gym, and we've been on a few dates. She knows my story and understands why I need to take things slow. She's also divorced, so she gets it. Monica and I have maintained a friendship, bonded by our shared experience. Her Etsy business has taken off. Turns out many people connect with jewelry designed by a woman rebuilding her life. Her kids are doing better now, especially after starting family therapy. We meet for coffee every few weeks to check in on each other's healing process. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself, but realizing that the person I trusted most in the world could lie to my face every day for months. The woman who held my hand at my grandmother's funeral, who nursed me through a severe bout of pneumonia 2 years ago, who knew all my fears and dreams, could wake up every morning and deliberately deceive me. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far with my revenge, if covering the house in evidence was too theatrical. But then I remember how they plotted together, how they laughed about their spouse's trust, how they planned to eventually leave us once James's youngest was in high school. I remember Sarah telling James that she was glad we hadn't had kids yet because it would make leaving me so much easier. And I know they deserved every bit of the consequences they got. Last week, I drove past our old favorite restaurant and saw Sarah there alone, during my last visit to the city to finalize some paperwork. For a moment, I remembered all our happy times there, birthdays, anniversaries, random Tuesday celebrations. She looked tired, older somehow. Our eyes met briefly through the window, and she quickly looked away. I felt nothing but pity. To anyone going through something similar, remember that you deserve better. Don't let anyone gaslight you or make you doubt your worth. There are always signs, trust your gut. And most importantly, document everything. Evidence is your best friend when dealing with manipulative people. The truth has a way of coming out, and when it does, make sure you're ready. Edit 1. Wow, this blew up overnight. Thanks for all the support and awards. To answer some common questions. 1. Yes, I had a lawyer review my evidence before using it. While some of my evidence gathering methods were questionable, the lawyer advised that in my state, using it for divorce proceedings wouldn't be an issue as long as it involved shared devices and spaces. 2. For those asking about the company policies, yes, their relationship violated multiple HR policies. Anderson and Mills had recently paid a substantial settlement in a similar case and had zero tolerance for supervisor-subordinate relationships. 3. Some have asked if I regret not confronting them directly. No, I don't. Given how manipulative they both were, I knew they would just try to gaslight me and destroy evidence if warned. The voice recordings proved this. They had actually discussed what they'd say if caught. 4. To those saying I went too far, maybe. But after listening to those recordings and reading their messages mocking their spouse's trust, I have zero regrets. They were planning to blindside us both, they deserve their own blindsiding. 5. Several people asked about Max, our dog. He's doing great. He's become best friends with my neighbor's golden retriever, and they have playdates every weekend. Dogs are incredible at helping you heal. Edit 2, since many are asking for updates. Monica's jewelry business has really taken off. She was featured in a local magazine's Women Rising section, and she's hired 2 assistants to help with orders. Her kids are thriving, her oldest got accepted to NYU, and her middle child made the honor roll for the first time. Sarah and James tried dating officially after everything fell apart, but it only lasted 2 months. Turns out their great love wasn't so great without the thrill of sneaking around. Last I heard, she's still single and in therapy. James apparently has a new girlfriend, but his kids refuse to meet her. I've been seeing Rachel for 4 months now. We're taking it very slow, but it's nice to feel hopeful about love again. She's patient with my trust issues and transparent about everything, exactly what I need right now. The startup I work for just got acquired by a major tech company, so my stock options turned out to be worth something. I'm using part of it to start a foundation helping kids learn to code. Keeping busy with positive things has been key to my healing. Edit 3, thank you for all the supportive messages and awards. This community has been incredibly kind. For those asking, yes, I'm writing a book about this experience. My therapist thinks it could help others navigate similar situations. I'll update when it's published. Final update, it's been 1 year since my wife cheated with her boss and I exposed them both. Hey Reddit. A lot of you have been messaging me asking for updates, so here's the final chapter of my story. Life has a funny way of coming full circle. Last week, I got married to Rachel in a small ceremony by the ocean. It wasn't a huge event, just close family and friends. Monica, my ex-wife's boss's ex-wife, was there with her kids. Her jewelry business provided the wedding rings, which felt poetic somehow. As for the others, Sarah, my ex, finally got in touch through her brother. She's in therapy and working through her issues. She apologized, a real apology this time, not the manipulative ones from before. I wished her well but kept the conversation short. Some bridges stay burned. James, her ex-boss, hit rock bottom. His new girlfriend left him after finding out about his past, and he lost his new job during company layoffs. His kids still won't talk to him. Hard to feel bad about that one. My book about surviving infidelity comes out next month. The advance money went to starting a support group for people dealing with workplace affairs. Remember Max, my dog? He was my best man at the wedding. Black tie and everything. He approved of Rachel from day one, which should have told me everything I needed to know. The biggest plot twist? Rachel's pregnant. We're having twins. Life really does give you second chances when you least expect them. This will be my last update. Thank you all for being part of my healing journey. Special thanks to this community for the support when I needed it most. Time to start my next chapter.